Rich people of Reddit who married someone significantly poorer. What surprised you about their previous way of life? My experience is from the opposite perspective. I was the poor one. It absolutely floored me how my wife acts when something broke, like a car, appliances, clothes, etc. As a child living below the poverty line, replacing a tire or other necessities was a disaster, requiring tricky trade-offs in the budget or just plain acceptance of just how boned you were. When my wife's phone broke, I went into full panic mode while she shrugged and said, "We can just a new one this afternoon." And then we did it. Wow. I have received a lot of responses on this. By far my most upvoted comment. You guys made my day. Thank you. I have seen a few repair it comments. Like many of you, I am also a Picasso MacGyver of the duct tape and trash bag world. This skill helped me break into IT. Sadly, the phone was beyond repair. Trust me, if I could have fixed it, I would have. And thank you for the silver. Last edit, y'all are giving me too many medals. I am very flattered, but this is going to spoil me. My husband grew up in a family where they were comfortable but on a strict budget. 6 kids and mom on disability. My family had no budget. One day we were at the grocery store and he always insists on walking up and down every aisle. I finally lost it because he was taking so long and asked him why he did it. Growing up we could only spend $100 a week on groceries for all of us. I always had to put what I wanted back because we couldn't afford it. Now I can afford whatever I want, so I like to look at everything I could have. Took him 10 years to tell me this. I felt like a terrible person. Edit. Thanks for the silver, kind homies. Edit number 2. I've had a few people, very few, comment that $100 a week is a huge budget and how is that a stretch. We live in a city with an extremely high cost of living. It's in the top 30 in the world. Getting a family of 4 fed for that much weekly would be a huge stretch here, and his family did an amazing job. Sandwiches. When I made him a sandwich I only put one thin slice of meat in it. He couldn't believe that was how I had sandwiches growing up. When we moved in together, I found out that she was putting her share of the rent on her credit card, with no real plan for how to pay it off. Edit. If you're coming in here to say you can't pay rent on a credit card or you were her plan, lem save you a few keystrokes. Don't. My so said today I made rent, meaning today I've earned enough, accumulated enough to pay the rent, and I realized that this is a monthly accomplishment to someone with no fixed income salary. I fell in love with my uni best friend who really didn't have any money. When I got a job, for my birthday I decided to plan a holiday and offered to bring him along. He doesn't know I'm in love with him at all, but maybe I should tell him. Edit. Rip inbox. Thank you all for the love and support. Hamburger helper. She hates it because it would be her meal 5x a week growing up. I had never even seen HH before I went to college and love that stuff. 10 for $10 deals are awesome. Rich people of Reddit who want to marry someone significantly poorer. Hello. Edit. Figures my most upvoted comment on Reddit is me being a gold digger, but I will take it as a win, since I got gold. Honestly, food insecurity. When we were first married she would get visibly uneasy if the food in the house was running low. She never overate or anything. She was just always concerned about it. A lot of times when she was younger, she went hungry. On the humorous side though, she hates camping. Her answer is always the same. I camped because it was fun. She camped because they couldn't afford hotels. I didn't marry this woman, but when we started dating, she always wanted to chill at my place. Never hers, which was fine. But she gained 35 pounds in just like a few months of dating. She was 100 pounds when we started dating. Not that it was a bad thing. 1. I am a chubby man, and 2. I was just glad she wasn't pregnant. Anyway, turns out her family couldn't afford dinner sometimes. So suddenly she had a place to eat every night and gorged herself. Long-term dating. Pets. I was always surprised by the number of pets she and her family had living in the trailer and how much of a share of their income they spent on them. The prevailing mindset in his community growing up that insurance was something only rich people had, not health insurance. Mind you, well, not just health insurance, auto insurance. Going without it was a way of life for most everyone he knew. I'm from the poorer family, not super poor, but my in-laws have a stupid amount of money, so by comparison I'm very poor. But I think I can answer for her. We have 2 young kids, and my wife was shocked when I said we should look for clothes and toys for them at local flea markets and garage sales. The idea never occurred to her that we could save money by getting some gently used items. She had never even been to a garage sale in her life. She has grown to love them and now questions whether it is worth it to buy any item new or not before running to Amazon or a store. Her parents think it's disgusting we make our kids wear clothes that another child had before. But they don't pay my bills. Not rich, but with a partner who was raised by a teen mom and grew up poor. Sometimes I just want rice and vegetables for dinner. That's a no from her. She won't go back. Credit cards were avoided. For me growing up, we were encouraged to get a credit card in our name and use it as much as possible in order to build credit. There was always money to pay it off each month. So it made sense to 1. Build credit and 2. Collect airline miles or whatever the reward was back in the day. When we got together, she always used cash or a debit card. She had a credit card for emergencies and avoided using it otherwise. It took a long time to get her over her aversion skepticism. We were fortunate to have 2 good paying jobs, though it also taught me a healthy appreciation for what it means to have a financial cushion. When the family had people over for dinner, if they ended the prayer before the meal with H, B, Amen, it was a signal to let the children know that they don't have enough food for everyone. So take smaller servings and let the guests get a regular serving. FHB equals family. Hold back. They were always generous to their friends and didn't let their lack of funds embarrass themselves when doing so. I dated a 1%er briefly. She was surprised I willingly went inside fast food restaurants. Edit. Since people are saying 1% is still a huge range in income, I just looked up a daddy pools and $10 million a year. My partner and I are both poor, but different kinds of poor. She's never been homeless or not had enough to eat, while I have. She's extremely frugal and hates buying anything we don't need. I feel a desperate need to stock up if we have any extra money, and it's a fight for me not to fill our house with canned and dry goods in case we don't have enough money to buy food next month for some reason. It makes no sense, but my instinct is to hoard food because there just was never enough of it around growing up. I am not well off, but my stepfather is. I was raised by a single mom who spent money on everything and bills were always behind. She just couldn't manage her money at all. In her 50s she met and married a multi-millionaire. We are in middle America, so that goes further than maybe in a lot of areas. They have given themselves $10,000 a month budget to live on, living on interest, own their home. Anyway, once my mom met him and they got all her finance situated and paid off, she won't spend a penny. He spends like it is going out of style. He has actually begged me to take her shopping to get clothes and accessories. She won't do it. She spent more when she was a single mom with nothing. It makes no sense to me. At least buy a new outfit. She is hell-bent to not use a penny of his money. They barely even have any groceries. If they have anything, it is because he buys it for them. She is a retired nurse that gets a retirement and SS, but she won't spend anything. She lives poorer now than any other time in her life. I'm not rich at all, but my husband came from a very poor Mexican village. He told me he used to shower outside because there was no in-house plumbing and use leaves as toilet paper. I mean, there's poor, and there's my husband's previous life poor. He's been living in the US for 12 years now, but when we first met it was so interesting seeing life through his childlike eyes. Going to the cinema was a huge event for him. Heating food up in a microwave was a totally foreign concept. And staying at fancy hotels when we went on vacation was like whoa. I still see him surprised by things now and then, and it just reminds me how much I take my middle status class for granted. I came from a relatively wealthy family, new money. My dad started his own business and grew up poor, and my wife came from a lower income blue collar family. We got married out of college and neither made much money in the beginning. My biggest surprise was how she wanted to spend money. She was shocked when my mom bought her $100 plus pair of jeans for a birthday. She couldn't wrap her mind around spending that much on jeans. but she wanted a motorcycle for me, which I don't ride in the first place, and then a new furniture set, and then a new bed, and then a new car. She wasn't concerned about savings or retirement, and she never wanted my parents' money for any of it. We are both way too proud of that. It took a long time for her to come around to having an emergency savings account, focusing on debt and not needing the other it. She eventually realized that her parents wouldn't be in such a terrible situation because their spending habits are horrible. She still has it come out sometimes though. We recently paid off my car and she immediately thought I should get a new car. My wife was born and raised in the Soviet Union. She still goes crazy for fresh fruit like it's the most extravagant luxury. She and her mother lived with her grandfather to not be homeless because her grandfather owned a house. She was putting community college payments on her credit card and building debt with it. I paid off her credit cards when we were dating and she cried from me being so nice. It was only like $1,300. I bought a condo. Then we got married. Then we bought a house. I never really considered myself rich until I started dating her and learned that a trip to Wendy's was a treat. I grew up middle class. And we are currently middle class. He was making good money but came from a poor family. One thing that surprised me was the lack of budgeting. No knowledge of a 401k Roth IRA. Retirement seemed like something that he'd never get to do. So even though he made good money he was starting to rack up credit card debt. Now he's much better at it than I am. He adores budgeting and looks forward to FIRE. Edit. FIRE is financial independence. Retire early. There's a sub attached to this idea, financial independence. Sorry about the confusion. One of my exes could pull in a lot of money, easily twice or thrice what I could. He was so incredibly bad at saving this money, down to, say, setting himself up as a company to avoid paying higher rate of tax, but then paying a large amount each month to an accounting company to handle his taxes, which he'd do himself anyway because he didn't trust them to get it right. He'd pay for taxes from one end of the city to another or hire cars rather than use public transport. Flights cancelled, book new ones, never bother to claim back on insurance, buy a sports car, wreck it, sell it for scrap. He'd work contracts and then take time off to work on his own startup, but spend every weekend just going out and buying drugs and booze. I thought it was really fun and wild at first. Haha, money really means nothing to you. But when we became a long-term couple I started feeling like his mother. Man, will you not just fill out the insurance paperwork? I was with a girl for a while who grew up in a pretty broken home. Still surprises me just how bad her spending habits are. She racks up credit card debt like it's nothing. Not super rich by any means, but my husband said he'll always be surprised about the following. How I lived off of $13k in 2011. Resiliency to survive financially and pursue my dreams of being the first college graduate. How I didn't know what spinach was or tasted like until our first few dates, in addition to hella other leafy greens. Edited formatting and grammar, sorry guys. What I learned in this thread is rich people don't like spending and poor people spend money like it is nothing. It doesn't directly relate to the amount of money they had, I don't think, but their place was always filthy. I mean, dog it everywhere. My soul lived with his mom sometimes, but would rotate between her and his father and both places were this way. Dishes piled up. Floors were grimy. The place stunk of dog pee and cigarette smoke. One time, I used the bathroom at one of his parents' places and had to spread my feet while sitting on the toilets to avoid stepping in period blood. I mean, it was so disgusting. I so was baffled when, after we first got married and moved in with each other, every day he would come home to a, generally, I'm not perfect, spotless home. Now, on the flip side, I once dated a guy whose stepfather was a lawyer, so they lived a lavish lifestyle. The only thing that he was surprised about when it came to my lifestyle was that I did not eat pizza with knife, fork, and a glass of wine. Lol. More of a funny incident, but I was the poor one. My husband, at the time still boyfriend, took me out to a very nice restaurant. Waiter asked if I want pepper on my Caesar salad that was just made tableside. I said sure and he goes about it. Thing is, I didn't know you had to say stop. My husband slowly realizes this, but decides to see it play out. He did eventually say that I need to say stop. I just thought a Caesar was had this way, as it was my first time even eating a salad that wasn't just iceberg and ranch dressing. It still tasted fine. Just a little bit too much pepper, haha. Please read the edit at the end of this post. Probably how often she shopped at Ross, grocery outlet, and other discount stores. I shopped at Whole Foods and bought my clothes at Macy's or online. For grocery shopping, we now go to grocery outlet mostly, with a trip to Whole Foods every once in a while. Significantly cheaper at grocery outlet, but checking expiration dates is a must. Aside from my hobbies, I find I spend a lot less on groceries and clothes now, which in turn allows me to spend more on my hobbies. She never forced her lifestyle on me and I appreciated that. Edit. I'm not super rich. I feel like this post now looks like a failed attempt at a humble brag. I never meant to offend anyone. I work as a software developer in Silicon Valley, but there are people with 20x my wealth here that would scoff at my salary. I also live in one of the most expensive cities in the country, but I was born here and I cannot leave. My intention was to show how my lifestyle differed with the lifestyle of my fiance. That's it. Also, I never cared for expensive clothes, so thank you all for telling me Macy's is for poor people. I'm a watch guy and not a clothes guy. My wife earned many times more than I did when I was a high school teacher back when we were dating. She sometimes would drive my 10 years old Prima black stick shift Honda Civic that my cousin lent me until I could buy another car. She was blown away how aggressively mean people are to you when you drive an ugly old car. When she got out of the car, the spell lifted. I got a lot of respect from her for that. She seemed to think I was a saint for not turning sour over it. I was constantly getting pulled over by cops and let go, targeted by road rage, and also pedestrians felt too comfortable engaging with me. I drive a new Honda, 1 year old, now, and it is so different. I drive the same but probably drive a bit more aggressively now that I can't hear the wind roaring by when I'm going over 40 miles per hour. I haven't been pulled over and haven't had a negative interaction on the road in a long time. Also, my wife now enjoys trading cars with me. Making financial decisions based around the 3-paycheck month. If you're paid every 2 weeks, most months you get 2 paychecks, and all of your monthly bills and budgeting is based on those 2 paychecks. But twice a year there are 3 paydays in a month, and that's when you can actually solve problems. That's when you can get the car registered, or fix the dryer, or get the cat spayed. The other 10 months you're doing maintenance and trying to scrape by. 3 paycheck months you can actually try to fix problems. I was adopted at age 7. I lived in extreme poverty and then all of a sudden I lived with a doctor who bought gifts for birthdays and Christmas. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could go to the store to get food. I just thought you went to the church and had to pray before they give you a bag of food. I'm from a middle class family, but my wife's parents are near billionaires. 0.001%. She was shocked about many things. 1. That I consider cost of food and groceries at all. They will go to gourmet food stores and spend over $1,000 and say things like, well, it's for food. We're ingesting this stuff, it should be the best. 2. Booking non-first class airfare on any long trip would be considered cruel and unusual punishments to her. 3. No concerns about utilities, insurance premiums. No comparison shopping on routine things at all. 4. Every vacation is the finest you can imagine, oftentimes bordering on ridiculous. Having so many upsells on packages and bespoke items that it's just wasteful. 5. No concept of debt and understanding of how normal people live. 6. My wife was shocked when I save things that get wet or muddy. She would just want to throw things like clothes and fine items in the trash away when they were just lightly bruised. We're very much in love and have shown each other a lot. She enjoys hanging with my salt of the earth mom more than her own family at this point. I like being spoiled here and there as well. It's a great mix. Edit. I've obviously adopted her standard of living. We met in medical school. She did a decent job of hiding her privilege. Our relationship grew out of our shared sense of humor and of course physical attraction. She lived in the desert without air conditioning. She just ignored things and didn't plan. Car needs to be registered? Well, it has a service light on and can't pass inspection, so I'll just drive it and registered. Student loans need to be paid. I don't have the money for it, so I won't open my mail from the servicer and ignore the problem. Need to fly somewhere for a big personal event. Can't really afford the plane ticket, so I'll push it off until the ticket is twice as expensive. It drove me crazy as I'm the opposite. Luckily, I was able to change her worldview on these things and her credit score went up a few hundred points. She got back on track and now can't believe her other family members who act similarly to how she did. My family is far from rich, but I grew up closer to the upper middle class realm and was making 3x as much as my now husband when we met. He grew up extremely poor, and his family is still living that way. One big difference is how he's surprised that my parents pick up the check when we go out to celebrate a birthday or a graduation, and that my parents ask him to pick whatever restaurant he wants, outside of the ritziest steakhouse in town. They don't care. To his family, a big meal out is going to McDonald's and not eating off the dollar menu. I'm serious. Both came from poor backgrounds. Hubby now earns 6 figures. I still buy my clothes from a charity shop because I cannot ever fathom why you'd spend a cute $400 on shoes and bags for a season. You can buy designer clothes in a charity shop if you know what you're looking for. I think Mans and Waitrose are just overpriced when you can get a trolley full of fresh food and eat like kings at Aldi for a cute $100. I don't do takeaway food. Funny story though. When we first got together, I was making a spaghetti dinner and grabbed a bottle of red wine off his shelf to add to the sauce. I didn't know what a cute 45 bottle of wine was, and still think it tasted pretty ordinary, and I drink a lot of wine. Oddly, my wife's family and upbringing was much poorer than mine. Surprisingly, she is the one who has poor spending habits. I am the frugal one. I always weigh the inherent value quality of the purchase versus the cost. She never does. She doesn't think much ahead of the basic monthly paycheck cycle. She'll spend money on junk. I'll wait and wait, then buy something really nice as opposed to some cheap pose that merely fills the gap in the moment. It has been the cause of many an argument between us. This is super embarrassing and will probably make you all hate me if it even gets any attention, but I come from a family just a bit higher than the top 1%. I was walking out of my ex's garage and I saw a lawnmower. I asked her why they owned their own lawnmower if they weren't in the landscaping business. That was the day I learned most people don't hire other people to mow their lawn. Edit. I was 20. My wife isn't even significantly less wealthy than me or my family, but they were less stably middle class. She saves yogurt cups and butter jars etc as Tupperware. It drives me bananas. We make a 6-figure income in a lowish coal area. I'm from the poor family. For my first car purchase, I went to a dealership and picked out a Honda Civic, and they proceeded to slap on something like a 10% finance rate on that sucker. I saw nothing wrong with it. I was young. I had no idea the typical finance rates, and I had brought my parents with me. Surely they would have raised a red flag if it had been a bad deal. No, I quickly realized later they had absolutely no financial literacy. One of the reasons we were poor, but certainly not the only one. Also, I could afford the monthly payments, and that's what really matters, right? I was about a year into it before I did some research, wised up, and paid that thing off ASAP. Drove it for nearly 10 years. Ended up being a great car. But I can absolutely understand why people end up in these terrible underwater loans with rates that make your head spin. That was me, and I consider myself a smart person. But financial literacy is a whole separate thing from being smart. A lot of people have this idea that if you're rich, you're automatically smart, and if you make poor financial decisions, you're dumb. Well, both my husband and I make 6 figures now, and I like pulling out this little nugget of info when people start cracking on people making bad decisions and they deserve to be miserable etc. I was like, that was me once. Ironically, once I started making money, I had the ability to take the time to do research and make better decisions, because things weren't done at the last second emergency. The stuff he buys, like, don't buy a $1.50 vegetable peeler because it'll break the 3rd time you use it. Done. And if a pair of shoes is $19.99 then it's because they're crap. He buys so much stuff because it's cheap. He hasn't yet got the hang of quality over quantity.